Well, obviously, United States is not dependent in a big way on China. Maybe 5%, 7% GDP, imports, exports. So it's not that China will slow down and immediately will go into a recession. So this is not the situation. The same thing, United States, as you know, is a very big, well-diversified economy doing very, very well. Mm-hmm. The issue is somehow a little more indirect because we have encouraged China, but also on their own, they're smart enough to realize that as an emerging economy, they cannot sustain what they used to experience 10, 12% growth by exporting because the rest of the world could not really absorb those huge productions of shoes and clothing and the rest of it. So when we went and Europe went into a recession in 2008 and 9 because of the crisis, China experienced a big shock because they were growing primarily as an exporter and not a domestically grown economy. Mm-hmm. So around 2009-10, with our own encouragement, but their own realization, they said, how can we restructure our economy so that the billion-plus people we have, they start spending domestically and we become less reliant on exports? Well, that is like trying to turn around Queen Anne in the Chicago River, correct? It doesn't happen in 6 months or a year. It may take 10 or 15 years. You and I may remember that Japan experienced that in the 80s, right? They kept growing, selling cars, television, and finally it reached a saturation point and they said, wait a minute, that's when they had their crash. So in China then, they tried to turn it around, and it was a brilliant idea that, well, if we want consumers to spend and buy houses and to buy cars and to buy goods, well, we need to make them wealthy. We need the middle class. Let the stock market go up. And they somehow encouraged people to invest in the stock market. In that process, turned out to be the creation of a bubble. And that's what we experienced in June when finally they couldn't push the market any higher and it dropped. So the concern then is that China will have to turn around, but the fact that their economy is not doing well is causing Brazil, it's causing India, it's causing all the Arab world. There's no demand for oil. And immediately what happened? The price of oil dropped as well. So China cannot affect directly United States, but because its economy is now the number 2, maybe number 1, not per capita, but in total GDP, then it has impacted the developing nations. They were all over Africa, you remember, all over Latin America. They were pouring money, and those countries were doing well. Now that they're growing at 4 or 5%, these countries are weakened. So currently we have then a problem with a slow Europe, slow China, and emerging countries where all the money went there to be invested because of future opportunities and how many people had really lots and lots of money in Brazil, and Brazil all of a sudden is having difficulties because their loans are denominated in dollars, and when their currency gets weak, the burden is much bigger. So it's the indirectness of China's impact that becomes relevant.
And you think